Once upon a time, there was a little yellow school bus. It was a school bus from the very beginning of its life. That's all it ever wanted to be. And it was so happy. It was painted bright yellow. And Ben, the driver, kept it clean and neat inside. And he changed the oil. He made sure that it was full of gas. And they had a good time together. The little bus would take children to school in the morning, and then it would wait and take them home in the afternoon. And it was so happy, especially when the children were on the bus laughing and singing. Sometimes it was sad because when children misbehaved, but that didn't happen very often. And then one day, when they were back at the bus garage, the little bus heard a man talking to Ben, and he said, "You know, the little bus has got a lot of miles on it. It's getting old. I think maybe it's about time to take it out of action. And since you're about ready to retire, Ben, maybe we ought to retire you and the bus at the same time." Well, Ben's face got sad. The little bus knew what retirement meant for it. When the bus is no longer able to do its job, it goes to the junkyard. So the bus was very sad. But the very next day, Ben came to the little bus and said, "I've met some very nice people who want to buy the bus and who want to take it to Cuba." Well, the little bus was interested. Didn't know what Cuba was or where it was, but it was interested. And Ben explained that Cuba was a small country, an island country, not too far from the United States, where all the people there were very friendly, but they were also very poor. And the people who were going on the bus were going to help the people. And the bus said, "That sounds nice." And then Ben said, "And I've decided, since I'm retiring, I've decided to go and drive the bus." Well, the little bus was so excited. And sure enough, before long, 12 people came on board, and they brought with them some powdered milk and some computers and some medicines and some school supplies to take to the children in Cuba. Well, they started on the trip, and a funny thing happened. Other people heard about it, and they started getting excited. They wanted to take the same trip. And so before long, there was another bus, and there was a truck, and then there was another bus and more people. And before long, there were 300 people, and all kinds of trucks and cars and buses. And before they got to Cuba, to Mexico, where they crossed from the United States, there was 100 tons of computers and school supplies and medical equipment, all kinds of things. Now what they were going to do, what they had planned to do, was to go all the way down through the southern part of the United States, through Texas. And when they got to the Mexican border, they would cross the border and drive over 300 miles down the eastern coast of Mexico. You can look it up on a map. And they would come to a little port city called Tampico. And there they were going to put all the supplies and the buses and the little yellow school bus, of course, on a freighter. And all that would go to Cuba, and then the people would fly to Cuba and visit with their new friends. Well, what happened was, when they got to the border and ready to cross over into Mexico, some U.S. government officials said, "You can't do this. there's a law that says you can't leave this country and go to Cuba because they're our enemy. Well, some of the people on the bus had been to Cuba before, and they knew that Cuba wasn't an enemy. And they said, no, we've got to go. And the officials said, no, you can't. Well, the little yellow school bus said, I didn't come all this way just to stay here or to go home. And the people said, no, this is a silly law, and we're going to sit here until you change your mind and let us cross the border. And that's just the way it is. And they did. They sat on the little yellow school bus for 23 days. Not only that, but they said, we're not going to eat anything. We're going on a hunger strike. And you know what happened? There was television cameras there that heard about the story, and they started spreading the word all over the world. And before long, people were calling the people in the United States government and saying, this is silly. Let these people cross. Well, way after a while, when the officials realized that the little yellow school bus and the people were going to sit there until they let them cross, they let them cross. And they did what they had planned. They went down to Tampico. They put all the medicines and the supplies and the little bus on a freighter. And they went over, flew over, and visited with friends. Sometimes when I tell stories, I say that all my stories are true, and some really happened. You know what I mean when I say that? This is a true story. Now, I know buses can't feel or think, have feelings like you and I do. And I don't know Ben. I kind of made him up, although Ben reminds me of a lot of very real people. But that part about the trip and the people waiting until they could cross the border, all of that is very true. And that happened way back in 1993. And the little yellow school bus is still in use. The Ebenezer Baptist Church and the Martin Luther King Center in Havana, Cuba still use the bus. And I know that's true because just a few years ago I was in Cuba and I rode in Havana and I rode the little yellow school bus. Now, it's not just a little yellow school bus. Of course, I have to admit, it's not as bright yellow as it once was. The paint is fading. And I do believe it needs some new shock absorbers because it was a kind of a rough ride. But it's still going strong. And the little yellow school bus has become the famous little yellow school bus. I hope you've enjoyed the story. And I hope one day you get a chance to go to Cuba because the people there are so nice and it's a great place for the little bus to be.